KLK 102.5 FM. Good morning to you on your Tuesday. It is May 24th, 2016. I actually got the wrong date. You were tuned to the Wake Up Jonesboro Morning Show. Kato Wonder is here in the studio with you, and we have a very special guest in the studio with us. We have City Councilman Mr. Charles Frierson, and this is a special feature that we are doing on KLK. We are going to start doing a series of interviews with Jonesboro City Councilmen, and these interviews will actually air on the Jonesboro City Channel 24, so be on the lookout for that. So first of all, I want to just say thank you for coming, Councilman Frierson. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Nice day.
Oh, yes, sir, it is. Okay. Well, my first question is, tell us a little bit about yourself, the ward that you represent, how long you have lived in Jonesboro, and what are you doing when you're not being an alderman?
Well, I try to practice law. I'm still practicing, but I'm semi-retired, really. I go to the office every day, but I've cut back on my work considerably. And that's kind of why I thought about maybe I ought to try to run for the council and contribute some more to Jonesboro. I've been in Jonesboro all my life, all my 84 years, as a matter of fact. And I watched this city grow from a town to a major city and the problems associated with that. And we've had to deal with those things in city government recently at a pretty high level, really.
Okay. Well, Councilman Frierson, when and why did you first decide to run for council? It's not the highest paying job in the world, and you know you can get a lot of grief. It's definitely evidenced by the property code debate. And so why did you decide to run for the council and, you know, subject yourself to the public scrutiny that comes with that?
I think I had watched, mostly the reason is that I had watched the quality of life in Jonesboro go down somewhat. We are the goose that laid the golden egg, and we attract all kinds of people from all kinds of locations around us who are having less success in moving forward. And I've seen that quality of life somewhat deteriorate, and maybe that's natural when we have the kind of growth we've had. But I wanted to play a part in maybe bringing back some of that quality that I had known in the past. Do you think
you've been successful at doing that?
To some extent, not entirely.
Well, what do you think you could change, do different?
Well, unfortunately, we're not going to do it with a housing rehabilitation code, are we?
Well, no, the property code was soundly defeated. 65% to 35%, it was repealed.
I'm hopeful that this new committee that has got a pretty good cross-section in it that will come back with maybe less demanding code and be more satisfactory to those that have been against it this time.
Okay, so on the original vote for the property code in which Mayor Perrin cast the deciding vote, did you vote for or against the code?
Oh, yes, I was for it. I served on the original committee that came up with a different version that didn't have any interior connected to it. And somehow that got transferred to another committee, and they came up with the one that was actually presented. But I was for it anyway.
Okay. Well, we're not going to waste too much time on the property code. I'm sure that debate has been done to death. By the way, phone lines are open at 870-277-1080 if you want to call and ask the councilman a question. Once again, that phone number is 870-277-1080. We are speaking with Jonesboro City Councilman Charles Frierson. All right, Mr. Frierson, what accomplishments have the city made in recent years that you are most proud of?
Well, I have to say the Miracle League Park. It has received nationwide approval and admiration, and it's been a really, really fine addition to our city totally. That's not to say that the sports park west of the city hasn't done the same, which it has. Those kind of things will attract progress and industry and other aspects of a growth of a city in the right direction.
All right, so what are some of the concerns, what are some things going on in Jonesboro that concern you, that you're worried about, that you hope to see improved?
Well, the hot issue currently is salaries and payment to our first responders, the police and firemen. And that was kicked off, as you know, everybody knows, I guess, by the leaving of the police cars overnight at the municipal center. And I don't disagree with that. I think it got our attention, and that there were some problems in an area which we want to be addressed. I don't want to just have a police and fire department that's average. I want to have better than average in this town, and we're not there.
Well, I think anyone could agree with that. We want the best possible police and fire protection that we can possibly have. But why do you think it's so difficult? Why it seems like it would be a no-brainer that the city should do whatever it can to make the salaries of the police officers more competitive. I recently saw a posting from the University Police of Arkansas State University, and their patrol officers starting out to actually make more than the JPD officers. And not just that, I hear stories all the time of surrounding police departments. Their patrolmen starting off make more money than JPD, but Jonesboro is a much larger city. So, in your opinion, why do you think it's so hard?
Money. The allocation of somewhat scarce resources in trying to get this town back on track with the kind of development we've had. We've had constant, every year, 6% increase in our city population and in the things that those require. Police and fire salaries come not out of special funds, but out of the general funds that have to be allocated to all the other resources of the city. And it's not easy for the budget people, the mayor and his staff, to come up with trying to take away from over here and put it over here when you have a limited amount of income. Yes, we've done well with the sales tax, but it too has not really kept up with the demands of all these various entities that the city is responsible for. So it's back to, where do we find the money? I don't think it's going to be in the regular budget to allocate more of general revenues to this source. I do not think it is sensible to dip into what we call emergency funds. We got to remember that this city is in a possible earthquake zone area. We're definitely in a tornado area, and we had an ice storm that cost a bunch of money back when, and we can't depend upon either the state or the federal government to hand us big dollars to take care of those things. We have to have some kind of emergency reserve fund, and we can't dip into it. The second problem with that is, if you pull something out of there, that's a one-time deal. And if you allocate it to salaries, what are you going to do the next year and the next year and the next year for these salary increases?
Well, that certainly makes sense. But let's bring this up. And of course, this is the dreaded T word that nobody likes to hear, taxes. But what if there was a proposal for I guess call it police and fire tax, sales tax to, go toward those salaries? I know people don't want to pay an increase in taxes, but in your opinion, if this was something that was clearly specified, I guess you could even, for a PR perspective, call it the back to blue tax. I want credit for that, by the way, if you all proposed that. But if something like that was proposed, do you think that it could garner support? Because from what I see in the community, the Jonesboro community is definitely behind our first responders.
Yes, it is. And we need to do that. And yes, I do believe this city, based on past performance and excluding the vote where they tied two things for the vote together, they tied salaries of first responders, but they also tied the general thing that nobody understood about sending some money out to this entity that attract industry. And I don't think it was made sense to put those two together. If they come up with let's take a 0.5 cent sales tax for first responder salaries, I think the people of Jonesboro are ready to accept that. If we sell it properly, if we show the need. Another problem we have with salaries and compensation for these people is that if you look at this long list, which I just recently saw and was very surprised about, of all the things in addition to the actual dollar salary that we provide these police and fire people, and I'm for it, but if you add all that up, it's a large amount on top of the salary issues themselves. They kicked up the salaries 2%, I think I'm right, and it cost over $1 million of the city's funds, general funds, for the coming year to even meet that small amount of increase.
Another concern concerning the salaries of the police department, one of the concerns that the officers have is the experience pay. I'll give you the example that's always cited. We currently have a group of officers that were just hired. They're currently are undergoing training. They're going to go through months of training before they actually hit the street. Well, when they get into the police car with that field training officer, there's a good likelihood that these new hires are going to make the same amount as that field training officer who has been on the force for many years. And there are these veteran officers, there's some resentment of that. They feel like they put in their time, they put their lives on the line, they've stuck it out, they didn't go to another department, and they feel like their pay should match up with their years of experience. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with that, and I don't know how to solve it. I don't know the formula by which we ought to do it. I haven't studied it. I don't feel confident to say. But I do think that the new committee, here we go with committees again, and I guess we're a little bit tired of saying, well, they've thrown it to a committee. But that's the way you have to establish it. At least he has 2 policemen on this committee who can put some input into it. And if they come up with a formula that makes that better, I am certainly in favor of that. You're right. We shouldn't be paying new hires as much, or even better, I guess, as some of the older people around, experienced people. It's too expensive to train a new officer over a period of 6 months or more before you turn them out on the street and then lose them for salary reasons, or lose the old experienced guys.
Yes, sir. We're speaking with Mr. Charles Frierson. He is on the Jonesboro City Council. Phone lines are open at 870-277-1080 if you have any questions or comments for Mr. Frierson. And we have a call right now, so let's go ahead and take it. Kayla K, who's this?
Good morning. This is Norman Farrell.
Turn your radio down, Miss Farrell.
All right. Good morning, Council Frierson. I think you know who I am. My parents and myself have been long time livers here in Jonesboro. My dad had a shoe shop in his daughter downtown. I think I've talked to you before. But what my question was about, you talking about the police and firemen's salaries, and I don't know if they have even considered unionizing themselves, and I don't know if the city would even accept that to happen. I don't know how their policies are, but most union people, and I've worked like at General Electric and places like that. It started with people that had been there 30 years. It started right beside them making the same excellent salaries that they were making, and I know when you have a union, it supports its people, it protects its people, and they pay very well. So how would they do that if they would, like you say, the ones that come right off the street making the same salary that the ones that have been there before? If you were in a unionized union environment or whatever they do to organize that, how would that help?
Well, Councilman, before you answer that question, let me because we have Channel 24 here recording, and because we have the mics muted, they couldn't hear the question. The question comes from Mrs. Norma Farrell. She wants to know from Councilman Frierson, how do you feel about the police officers possibly unionizing?
Well, that's a brand new question, and I don't have a feeling either way about it. I do know that unions for public safety people like police and firemen are different from those out in the business community. They're not expected to do certain things like strike and a few other things. But how that would affect what we're into now, I really don't have an answer because I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, well, that was the question.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for the call, Mrs. Farrell. Once again, phone lines open, 870-277-1080. Councilman Frierson, let's talk about drainage issues in the city's long... Oh, well, so I've got another call. Kayla K. Kayla K. Kayla K. Well, I guess we lost the caller. So once again, what are your thoughts on the issues with drainage in the city of Jonesboro?
Well, I come from a law practice where I have 8 different drainage districts under my supervision, including a very large one in Poinsett County and 7 more here. So I kind of have a feel for the problems of drainage, getting water out of here. One of the problems is quite simple. Other than up on the ridge itself, we're in a swamp around us, and it's basically flat ground. There's no downhill for the water to run. And in a heavy grain situation, the San Francisco River, which is where all of our water finally winds up in the floodway or the river itself down south, floods and backs up to the point where our water has no place to go. I don't care how much ditches you dig or clean out or do anything else. In those kind of conditions, it doesn't have any place to go, and it has to wait its turn to drain off all the way down through the Mississippi River. It's quite a problem. Internally, Jonesboro for years had a drainage district. It consisted of everything west of Main Street, and they put in a lot of underground tile for floodwaters and drainage, and they did other things, but then they didn't act right, and Judge Roy Bearden canceled them. So we haven't had a district that operates at all in this city in a long time. So we've had to depend again on general revenues to take care of the drainage issue. And the city has done a remarkable job in handling some of those. We have as much drainage areas cleared south of town, whether it's Higginbotham Creek right beside the east side of Coolidge Ridge that runs down, connects into Poinsett, or whether it's over in the drainage area of Higginbotham Creek, which drains basically our factory areas. All of those things are operating as well as they can. You've got some areas in town that should never have been built, quite frankly, because they're in a swamp. And the best evidence of that is out east of Red Wolf Boulevard, north of the bypass, in that housing area. I forget what it's called, but it's a housing area right there in that area, and it's too low. I guess we didn't have the right controls back then when we permitted all that to be developed, but they have been suffering, and I understand that, but I don't know what we're going to do because we've dug that ditch out to the maximum.
Yeah, I can imagine that drainage is definitely a big issue in Jonesboro, especially with the way that Jonesboro is growing. You got so many new developments being built on all sides of town, like the big Greensboro development on the northeast side, and several other big developments in all directions. So it's definitely a very important issue, because obviously nobody wants to live in a swamp and one day come outside of their house and they're met with a bunch of floodwater. So it's definitely something that we definitely want to stay on top of.
And now, the problem is not that you're getting more water over time from these developments. It is that instead of a slow drainage, when they develop and pave and do things, particularly parking lots or whatever, it comes so much faster. It gets downstream so much faster, and you have to plan for that if you can.
Yes, sir. Now, we just talked earlier about the different developments that are coming to town and all of the growth that Jonesboro is experiencing. What do you think Jonesboro needs to continue to grow, and to grow at a healthy pace, so that all of the citizens can benefit, and especially like issues such as zoning, making sure that areas are properly zoned, so that you don't have a hodgepodge of different kind of zoning developments and things, so that basically everyone in the city can basically live in harmony together?
Well, harmony is difficult to achieve when you're talking about rezoning issues. I found that out on the council. One of the more difficult things I ran into when I first started in the council is the conflict about rezoning from single family to multifamily some type, even just from single family to duplexes, which is not the big high-rise multifamily, gets a lot of conflict and a lot of dispute and makes things difficult for the council to figure out what best to do. But it's not really the council's issue to do that. The Metropolitan Area Planning Commission is supposed to review and study and bring recommendations to us and to the developer, and then we're supposed to look at them and see whether they made a mistake. But sometimes the council has simply counted the hands of the people that are against it and said there are more people against it that are for it, so we're going to turn it down.
Yes, sir. Once again, we're speaking with Jonesboro City Councilman Mr. Charles Frierson. Phone lines are open at 870-277-1080. So what else do you think Jonesboro needs in order to continue growing? And let's take it from the standpoint of industry and jobs.
Well, industry, if he wants to come here, looks at a lot of things. It looks at the quality of life, because it will quite often brings a number of their top-level people in to live here, and they want to know what kind of atmosphere we've got for them. I think it certainly is going to help to have a convention center, for instance, and it looks like we're going to have more than one.
Okay, and let's talk about that.
Okay.
Obviously, there were two convention centers, one proposed by Arkansas State University and the other one, I believe, proposed by the Keller Group, am I right?
Yes.
And the city decided to back the Keller proposal, which upset some people who were in favor of the Arkansas State proposal. Some people felt that the city should have got behind the Arkansas State proposal because that would have been a benefit to the students that attended Arkansas State University who could have gotten that training from that convention center, as well as to help further develop the north side of Jonesboro, which has been somewhat left behind when it comes to development. So just what are your thoughts on that issue?
Well, those issues are presented to the advertising and whatever committee that has the funding that collects the tax from what you call it when people buy a room tax.
Hotel tax.
Yeah, hotel tax. I'm sorry. And then they disperse it. Well, they already are funding a number of things. And here again, it's an issue. Do they take money away from those in order to put into two convention centers? No. What they did is, according to what I read and hear, the Keller proposal was less expensive to them. They weren't asking for nearly as much, if at all, of their money to bring their convention center to fruition. And it was just a matter of money. It was a matter of money financing on the part of that committee.
All right. Well, Mr. Frierson, we want to definitely thank you for those sentiments. Hopefully it'll kind of clear up a little bit on that issue. All right. Councilman Frierson, where do you see us in the city in 10 years? I mean, you said earlier that you were 84 years old. It's definitely a blessing to live to be that old, and so, not calling you old, but experience is a better term. But obviously in your years, you have definitely seen a lot. I'm sure you have tons of stories. We could probably talk for hours about all of the things that you've seen over the years. And so obviously you've seen from where Jonesboro was to where Jonesboro is now. So where do you see Jonesboro 10 years from now?
Well, we've seen the projections, or heard about them at least, that by 2020, maybe 2025, if you want to really be careful, we're going to be 100,000 people in this town.
Yes, sir. I've heard that.
Isn't that amazing? That's
yes,
just
sir.
Absolutely amazing. How are we going to take care of the infrastructure to handle that many people, plus all the people that are coming in every day?
Councilman Frierson, back to your discussion on infrastructure and the city of Jonesboro in the upcoming future.
We can hope, of course, that the people will still want to shop and spend their money here, whether they live in Jonesboro or come from outside, and that sales tax will continue to increase to take care of some of our future needs. But I'm not sure that's enough. I'm not sure we don't need to turn to some more capital funds to do streets and things like that. You know, we had the street possibility turned down, and I was uncomfortable with that because we need it badly. And traffic used to be, if it isn't now, the number one issue of people in Jonesboro. They wanted something more done about the traffic.
Well, traffic definitely. I mean, I've been here a short amount of time, and traffic has definitely gotten much worse. Let's go to the phones. Kayla K, who's this?
Hey, this is Norman Farrell again.
How you doing, Mr. Farrell?
Talking about the convention center. I'm asking Councilman Wyman, does he think that Arkansas State can take care of their own with the grants programs that they, write up and the money that they get in, and let the city take care of helping with the other one?
All right, the question from Mrs. Farrell is the question of.
Okay, I'm gonna hang up.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Farrell. The question is, do you think that Arkansas State will still be able to take care and manage their own convention center while the city puts their funding behind the Keller proposal?
Well, I can only say I'm sure they have carefully considered it, and I think they have come to the conclusion that they can be successful. It's a little bit different, as you suggested earlier, that it's on the campus where other things can occur out there with this convention center. And that may inspire them to move forward. I don't have any personal idea whether the two can succeed or not, or whether one is going to find it very difficult, or whether both will. I have in the past always wondered about our ability to have a successful convention center of any kind, because people who bring their families to a convention in Jonesboro have no real place for those families to be entertained. They have to go across the river to Memphis, or they have to go somewhere else. We're not on a lake. We're not, we have no other kinds of activities to be, at least not a great number of them, like some cities. Hot Springs, obviously, we know what's there. Maybe even Little Rock has things, but I wonder about how many conventions we can attract.
Well, yes, sir. That kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier about where do you see us in 10 years. So obviously, you feel that there needs to be more entertainment options for people who come to Jonesboro for various conventions. So anything else that you want to add to that, and any final comments that you would like to say?
Well, this is a wonderful city, and I want to see us continue to improve the quality of life and make it wonderful. And that includes all sorts of activities that the city is responsible for. Not just police and fire, but that's the current top issue, and I certainly agree we need some attention there. But there are other issues as well, and as we grow, if we do get to the 100,000 level, we're going to find lots of opportunities and not so much funding for them.
All right. Once again, we have been speaking with Jonesboro City Councilman Mr. Charles Frierson. Mr. Frierson, we want to definitely thank you for stopping by our studio today. You are certainly welcome to come back at any time. We want to thank Channel 24 for coming by the studio today to record. We certainly look forward to doing more of these interviews with more of your Jonesboro City Councilman. You listen to KLEK 102.5 FM.